Welcome back. You're on centralcoastradio.com. Well, now we're going to take a look at a brand new Finnish film called Sisu, which has got the whole world talking at the moment. Now, this film is set at the end of World War II, and a former general, Atami, played by Jorma Tommila, has kind of left the war behind. He's left the battlefield. The Nazis are still in Lapland where he is, but they're slowly leaving, although they're destroying everything as they do so. Now, he has started to gold mine and suddenly hits the jackpot when he finds a huge nugget, and which leads to a gold stream. But as he decides that he can go and cash this in for cash and make a new life for himself, he runs into a group of retreating Nazis led by the brutal Bruno, played by Axel Henny, and he's also got some pretty mean lieutenants around him as well, including Wolf, played by Jack Doolan. Now, they soon realize that Atami has gold, and they want it, but he is not going to give it up without a fight. Also, at the same time, Bruno and Wolf and co have got a group of women led by Aino, played by Mimoso Willamo, that they are keeping as sex slaves. Now, Atami decides that he also wants to free them, but first of all, he's got to protect himself, his horse, his dog, and his gold from these Nazis that want everything from him. Lee, what did you think of Sisu? Because it's a pretty violent film, but what did you think of this one?
It is a very violent film, but you have to keep in mind that it is a story of survival, and while there's lots of violence, there's a reason for it, and that's to protect. It's a protection. It's a protection for himself. It's a protection for his animals. Now, there are a few sad scenes in here, and I'm not saying which ones, but there are some really horrific scenes in here of what happens to people, sometimes animals, and so you've got to be ready for that as well. And even some of the, I guess I'll say, a knife scene, like there's quite a horrific knife scene that stands out in my mind. Again, it is certainly a story of survival. It shows the selfishness of people, and what they will do just to remain in a control or powerful position, and to take from others, whether it's life or possessions. And it brings up a lot of emotions, because you are desperately hoping that that kind of thing will stop, that there won't be violence towards people. Now, the main character has many creative survival techniques, so it really keeps you intrigued along the way, and you can almost celebrate his creativity in how he survives. There's different kind of storylines too. There's a group of women that have been kidnapped, and they're abused physically, sexually, emotionally, and the main character Atami becomes aware of this, and so you see the storyline of then how that unfolds and what happens to these women, and of course you're hoping for the best for them. It had a bit of a Western feel to it, even though it's a war movie.
Yeah.
And I found that quite unique, actually, and I really enjoyed that component of it.
I thought it felt like what would happen if Quentin Tarantino directed a Clint Eastwood Western.
Yeah.
Yep.
As I said, I really enjoyed how that was played out. The other thing I liked was the music in the background. It had a bit of a Viking sound to it.
And throat singing.
So if you have not heard that type of music before, have a listen to it. In fact, a band or two that...
Yeah, they were on our show a few weeks ago. The Who, who are Mongolian throat singers.
Yeah,
yep.
It sounds amazing. So definitely have a listen to that and be aware of it in the background as you're watching the film.
It adds to the atmosphere.
It really adds to the atmosphere, that's right. Yeah, I think I liked how it brought in that he was a gold digger and things like that as well. So it wasn't a standard war movie.
In the traditional sense, not what we refer to as a gold digger these
Yes,
days. So
yes,
yeah.
yes. Digging for gold. So yeah, I like that that was added into the war type story. So definitely, I enjoyed the movie overall. As I said, it was very violent. There were scenes that I really thought were brilliant. I enjoyed the plane scenes as well, and I won't go into that because I don't want to do spoilers. But there are a lot of, there was a lot of interesting things in this movie.
Yeah, it's a strange film in a sense. Like, a lot of people have said that it feels a lot like Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards, but the director here does the same as what Steven Spielberg did with War Horse, or what Christopher Nolan did with Dunkirk, and he kind of brings a beauty to a landscape that's been destroyed by war. There's some amazing shots in here, and the director's done a really, really good job at bringing that beauty to this film amongst all the chaos of what's happening. And I think Jalmari Helander is one of those directors that, if you're into Scandinavian cinema, you've known about him for a long time because he's done a lot of genre films over the years. But this is by far his best film, and what he's been able to do here. And as a result, of course, his film's now not just showing in small art house theaters. It's now getting a wide release by Sony and stuff like that. So he's really announced himself here as an action director, I would think you would say. And yeah, like, for me, likening him to Quentin Tarantino is a big thing, because Quentin Tarantino is one of my favorite directors. So to be able to put this person in that same realm is big praise for me. I also love the fact that his screenplay is creative. There's so many directors out there that try to emulate Tarantino, and they do that by doing things that we've seen Tarantino already do in his films. But here, Helander comes up with new, interesting, and unique ways for Atami to not only escape different situations, but to kill people as well. There's a very creative one very early on in this film that I don't want to spoil, but I get the feeling that Quentin Tarantino would sit back and just absolutely love this film, because it's very reminiscent of the Ozploitation movies that that Quentin Tarantino was a fan of, that set him on his path. So I think Jalmari Helander really announces himself to the rest of the world here. It feels weird saying that, because I've been watching his films now for a decade or more coming through Scandinavian cinema, but I think he's really announced himself here, and I wouldn't be too surprised soon if he's not working with some of the bigger action stars out of Hollywood as well, because I think this film certainly sets itself to that. I wish that this kind of film could win an Oscar, because, like you said, I love the soundtrack, I love the visuals, I love the creativity that this film has. So yeah, I don't know, it's just got that grit and beauty that Scandinavian films have, but with this kind of Hollywood feel to it. A lot of people have also likened it to the Brad Pitt film Fury, which is set in a tank for a lot of the time as well. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this film. What are you going to give this 1 out of 5?
I'm going to give it 4 out of 5. I also thought that there was some very brilliant scenes, action-wise, with very little dialogue at times.
Atami doesn't talk for most of the film. So.
And yet you were so connected with his character and just wanting him to survive. And there are some things that happen to him where you're holding your breath and you're like, oh my goodness, like, he's gone. And he just acts it out so well. And yeah, as I said, when there's scenes with very little dialogue, you're still captured so much by those scenes.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit higher than you. I'm actually going to give it 5 stars because this is the kind of film that I wished I could have directed. Like, it's just an absolutely amazing war slash action film. And like I said before, really announces Jamari Howlander to the rest of the world outside of us that love Scandinavian cinema. So I'm going to give Sisu 5 stars, and you gave it
4.
4. And it does have a semi-wide release, so maybe just check to see if it's showing at a theatre near you. It seems to be getting a little bit of a mainstream release, but still in only select cinemas. So check your local cinema guide and see if it's showing at a cinema near you. But Sisu is definitely one of the movies of this year that is well worth a look. You are listening to CentralCoastRadio.com.